Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unity Crypto's YC Finance community calls. And I just realized that I haven't enabled sharing my screen yet. So here we go. So we have this YC Finance community calls every Wednesday, 5 p.m. CET. And if you're subscribed to any of our channels and Cozy Web, then you will find the Zoom link there. Today, we have Particula F, and we'll be talking about their solutions and vision on how to enable the evaluation and transparency on digital environmental assets. And with Unity Crypto, we are very much interested in that topic because it will make it a lot easier to help participate in YC Finance. And Unity Crypto, we found more solar to go greener. So you can here try out the limited edition of carbon credits already. They're deployed on Gnosis chain, and it's a limited edition of high resolution carbon credits from solar rooftops on UK solar on UK schools. So that's an interesting project where you can get acquainted with. But the whole point is actually to use that also as a revenue source, but use that as a community to fund more solar. And the token itself should then actually be rewarding the community that funds more solar to go greener with both the revenue share as well as the carbon value of these newly funded solar projects. So we want to keep the assets connected and not detach the carbon value from the additional funding of new solar. And again, at the end of today, I will ask a lot of questions. But first, we will have introductions to the team, Nadine, Wolfram, Max. We will hear about the vision of Particula, the dimensions for evaluating the digital environmental assets. We also did the transparency check this Particula, and that was quite insightful, and I would love to discuss that at the end. But you will also have a deep dive and an example where we actually go through all the steps and even tokenomics of a concrete project. So I look forward to that. And as mentioned at the end, I would love to ask some questions that are more focused on, okay, what if we did it really in a Web3 native way? Can we still combine the worlds of ESG, institutional investors actually wanting to get into this most likely more transparent digital asset management? Good. With that, I'll give the floor and the Zoom presentation mode to you, Nadine, I guess.
Yes, I will just start. I just use my opportunity to say something now, and then I will give over to Wolfram. So let me just introduce myself. I'm Nadine. I'm one of the co-founders of Particula. And with Particula, we are building the first data platform comparison tool for digital environmental assets. And for that, we're also creating a holistic rating framework, to drive standardization in this space. And also to our team, I have a various background in business development, product strategy, but also in sustainability. And Tim, who's not here today, he is especially, he's coming from crypto regulation and from financial market, which is really, really great for our product. And saying product, we also have Wolfram, who can also say something about him as well, but he's responsible mainly for the product and also for our rating framework. So yeah, we are really happy to be here and to give you a glimpse about what we are doing. And also maybe I also say something to Max, because he's actually not from Particula. He is from Future Brains, and he can also say something about himself when I will take, or Wolfram gives him the speech then. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, my name is Wolfram. I'm one of the co-founders, as Nadine said. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation and talk to you about Particula and our journey. Where was our starting point? And yeah, let me jump right in. And in fact, our starting point was the voluntary carbon market. It's not the easiest market to understand, but I dare to make this bold statement that it's also otherwise quite broken. Why is it broken? Well, it is just totally inefficient, and the problem is it won't scale to the size where we need it to scale in order to fight the climate problem. And yeah, where are the inefficiencies coming from? Well, actually, they are available, or they are there to be seen throughout the entire value chain. So if you take a look at the supply side, for example, it's mostly the low level of digitization that causes a problem. Everyone has naturally their own system and their own database, which also leads to poor data quality and ongoing scams. Then the market itself is quite intransparent. Pricing is a big challenge. You will see pricing anywhere from $1 or $2 on the really low end up to $1,000 for a carbon credit, and that is extremely hard to understand for somebody who isn't involved that much. The market is highly fragmented and illiquid. Each project, because of the individual prices, cannot easily be exchanged for another project. It's an over-the-counter market, and oftentimes you don't just have one intermediary involved, but multiple intermediaries. And at the end of the day, the buyer today has no insights how many cents of his dollar that is being spent are really ending up with the project. And real quick on the demand side, for the longest time, it was close to private clients and hard to access. This is slowly but surely changing, but still it is not an easy accessible market for retail investors or even corporations. And all of that happens, with about a third of the revenue not ending up where it should be ending up. So yeah, once again, it's highly inefficient. So ReFi, you're not surprised, is offering a potential solution. ReFi, being at the intersection of Web3 and sustainable, really with the aim to change the financial system that we all live and work in, away from maximizing just profits, but towards really focusing on sustainability and making sure that we can keep the pace of running, living, and working in the long run by regenerating natural resources. And yeah, well, the great news is there are plenty of companies who have found solutions, who are trying to solve the problems of liquidity, who try to provide more transparent solution. They're all blockchain based. You see some of the more prominent ones here, but we have north of 150 projects just related to carbon projects alone. So they're all offering great solutions. The really odd thing is, on one hand, you have everyone complaining about the inefficiencies and the problems in the legacy market. Here's the group of companies that seems to solve them all, and they offer the products and services, but nobody's buying them. And that is really something that we didn't at first understand, and we dug deeper into it, and that's where actually our real intensive market research started, and we've spoken to many heads of ESGs, to financial experts, corporations who wanted to invest in such assets, and we asked, like, everyone wants the transparency, everyone wants the liquidity, everyone is asking for these things. What's the problem? And the top 3 answers that we got was regulatory implication. Again, the voluntary carbon market isn't the easiest to understand, and if you add blockchain to the mix, a lot of companies say, I don't even know what I'm getting, what I'm buying. What is this token? Security as a second big concern. With all of the news, unfortunately, it doesn't help. For many people, crypto, blockchain, that's all the same, and that doesn't help. But it's there, and we have to deal with this jointly. And then it is just simply the lack of time. Trying to find information, research it, spending the time to get into it. It's just simply nothing that a lot of corporations can afford to do. And yeah, all of that, interestingly, in the midst where we see, plenty of companies pledging net zero commitments, and it's going to be interesting because we only have a few years left, and currently the situation doesn't seem to fit together.
Wolfram, this is so good. Like, just this insight, and also like all the hard work that you must have put into this, I think is already so much value, because again, every project trying to explain in their own maybe even clumsy wording, because at one end we're trying to put solar on rooftops, and there's a lot of operational day-to-day work to be done, developing protocols and so on. But that issue here, and again, like the clarity you bring in already with this one overview is very, very cool.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback, and that was actually the birth hour of Particula, if you want it that way, because we said, there is no go-to place for corporates or individuals, to really get that full 360-degree view from all angles. You can find project-specific information, but there is really like no company that we've identified so far that would also cover aspects like regulation, compliance, security. A lot of people kind of like, and even token issuers raised their hand and said like, oh no, we're not dealing with that. But in order to convince companies to pull the trigger and make that investment, which oftentimes is the CFO, you have to make sure that also his questions or her questions are being answered. So just in a nutshell, high overview, what does it look like? In our system right now, we have some 500 projects that you can filter, search for by all kinds of criteria, regional types of projects, how they got implemented. We have 300 plus criteria. You can put them side by side, compare them, educate yourself, get all kinds of reports and in-depth analysis, and yeah, that's the one-stop shop that we're providing. We're at a later point going to add an inventory management where you as a corporation would also have everything together in one spot, what you have invested in terms of digital environmental assets. Yeah, and just as one quick example, because that's typically the first question that companies or people ask us, like, if we're talking about carbon certificates, I've heard about them, it's like, what about that tokenization process? And I just want to use that as an example to give you an idea of what we're talking about and what we are dealing with. So maybe a quick semi-deep dive into the process of tokenizing carbon credits. You might know or might not know that typically carbon credits are being issued by project and vintage. So in this example, if you have any kind of project in a given year that in this example would generate 8,000 carbon credits, then typically those 8,000 carbon credits represent 1 ton of absorbed or avoided carbon each. So we're looking at 8,000 tons of carbon. And that batch has unique characteristics, and that's why this entire batch is typically tokenized and being converted and brought on-chain as one NFT, a non-fungible token. I'm sure everyone's aware of what that is. And then in a second step, that one NFT is being fractionalized again into, in this case, 8,000 fungible tokens. So at the end of that process, you have one token each that also represents 1 ton of absorbed or avoided CO2. And this is how at least those credits that are coming from a legacy system are being brought on chain. And that's just one group. The second group are the so-called crypto native credits. And those credits are the ones that have never been existing in the traditional world, so to speak. The two big registries that cover the majority of all carbon credits today, Vera and Gold Standard, they have, by the way, put a hold on the tokenization process, as many of you have heard. And as one consequence, more and more companies say, you know what, it's a time-consuming process. They are bottlenecks. We don't have the time to wait for them. It's extremely expensive. We apply their high standards. We apply their methodologies, but we go straight to the blockchain. We register them on-chain, and you see some of the companies that do so. Then there are forward carbon credits. That's an interesting way of funding projects. That's a little more similar to what you're doing, because the majority of credits today are, at least in nature-based solutions, are avoidance credits. And that's all good and fine. They're important. But, what if like a rainforest, for example, had previously been cut down? So if you plant new trees, you need the money and the funding for the project now, but it will take years and years for the trees to grow in order to, meaningfully absorb CO2. And therefore, the timing from the need for the project financing and the reward sometimes falls years apart. But it's an interesting win-win concept, because with forward carbon credits, the project developers would get the funding today, and companies can secure access to future credits today, probably at a discounted and much better price. And then last but not least, there are carbon NFTs. And I just wanted to pick this one example to say, this type
Can
of...
I ask
Yes,
something
please.
before we,
Please.
if you go back,
Sure.
again, this is a great overview. Maybe I take another a screenshot of that as well. But
we
not
can
just
provide you
because
with
of
the
that.
information.
So basically, these are all though coming from nature preservation and so on. Like, this is great, but do you know the reason why there are no renewable energy carbon credits from renewable energy?
I guess
Or
there
solar
are
in this case?
several reasons. I'm sure you have one specific in mind.
So no. I mean, I have found some traces that, again, as you said, until now the rules have been made by the big players, Vera and Gold Standard together, they have almost over 90% of this market. They're making the rules basically, right? And at some point they decided not to have renewable energy credits and dropped methods around 2019, because the official or the explanation is because renewable energy technology has seen a high quick learning curve, and costs are dropping so much that they don't need this additional finance subsidy through selling carbon credits. At the same time, we know for the energy transition, there is a huge finance gap. So again, like, I don't know why really, and I just wanted to know if you heard anything, but that's currently the case, that when you look at all these solutions, and I don't know, maybe because they have started from you know, from the voluntary carbon markets, looking at the methodologies that exist, as you say, and then making it on-chain. Maybe that's why we don't see any renewable energy or solar issuance. And then the other side is renewable energy credits. But again, it's a different narrative, and it's a different use, like carbon credits or proof of solar. Again, these are different narratives, and the carbon credit case is quite interesting also for us. So that's why I just wanted to hear if you have some more info there. Okay.
No, I think, you know, the space is still moving. You're right. I also heard that, you know, at least the official reasoning is, you know, funding those projects which need it, and apparently solar projects, just as you said, like being rather accessible and you know, not in need of financing. But I think this will continue to change, because, you know, I mean, there are other technologies that are not nearly as far as solar, also different narrative, but who kind of like which feed into the carbon story, like direct air capturing and so, you know, and they also need funding, and they would basically fall into the same category.
Also, one thing, sorry, I just want to add also something, because this overview, maybe also to like Wolfram said, we just started with the voluntary car market, and therefore mostly those are all nature-based solutions, and the renewable energy market, so to say, even when they have crossovers, we kind of wanted to have it separate, and we are that's the next actually market we want to also dig deep into it, and that's why we separated, because I think the renewable energy sector, or actually all which are really technology based, so you have like really great data, and mostly the credits are really high valuable, and I think that's why you have to separate those two sides. And it doesn't mean, also from our opinion, that it's some is better or not. It doesn't matter, but it's so complex, and I think to break it down that way, it is, especially for us, it was easier to, you know, do the classification from there.
Makes sense. Also the comparability, right, of
exactly
of the methods. Yeah, that's true. Like, again, solar is nice with the finally having a digital or digital first companies even becoming the norm, like Unergy, and that's why it becomes much more easier to create high quality carbon credits there. That's right. Okay, thanks so much.
All right. Well, to make sure that Max has enough time to go through his presentation, so that is just one criteria, you know, a rather important one, but one criteria out of 300 plus that we have by now covered in our database. And again, as I mentioned it, you know, we do also focus on topics like compliance, legal aspects, accounting, and then tokenomics, which again, Max will elaborate on in a second. So talking about the rating, where is our starting point? So we typically first aggregate all of the publicly available information. And those are some 40 plus criteria. And we just create a score, which we call a transparency score, and initially we don't care, or judge or rate whether one answer is better than the other, but it is just simply the fact that that information is available. So in this case, for example, you see a company that obviously has provided a smart contract audit, so probably it was linked on the website, so you can verify it, but we have no information or haven't found information about the KYC or AML, or what the custody solution looks like, and so forth. So the next step would be then to engage the provider and make sure that pretty much the transparency score gets to 100%, and that just means we have 100% of the information. And then in the second step, we'll get to the actual rating, and our methodology is based on the methodology that is also being applied for green bond rating, and we're lucky to have the director of green bond rating from Sustainalytics, which was bought by Morningstar, in our team as external advisor, and she helps us develop those scores. So they focus on 3 attribute groups. So there's the environmental impact score, which obviously focuses on the underlying project, whether or not a third party audit and verification has been done. Then there's the compliance score that covers everything from KYC, on, off ramp, tax, legal, valuation, etc., and an economic score with aspects like token design, the incentives, which of course is very important because the incentive has to be big enough to get people to invest in those projects, and so forth. So what was important for us, you have to have a starting point, and our starting point was the carbon market, but we always said, there are more digital environmental assets that we want to be able to apply this rating to, and ultimately it can be pretty much applied in an adjusted format to any digital asset, because a lot of the aspects, if you think about it, are applicable even if we're talking about non-environmental assets. And we have teamed up with 2 organizations to solve one of the biggest problems that we are facing right now, and that is the lack of standardization. You might have heard of the ECOTA, and if you're interested, we can certainly get you in touch with them. They are a think tank that also aims to foster the mass adoption of carbon offset solutions in general. And they have already 3 working groups. We are the latest one that just started, and I myself spearhead that group with Kara Reuner. She's director of the ECOTA. And yeah, it starts with agreeing on a certain terminology, because we're not talking about the same thing in this space, just a classification framework that aims to make projects comparable, just the promotion of transparency, certain must-haves. You would be surprised, I wanted to say, to know how many projects don't provide certain information just because they don't have it or because they're unaware. And all of this is leading in the first big milestone, which is publishing a white paper on the topic. So there are 12 corporations involved, and it's just a first step, and we're aiming to help standardizing the space. And the second organization we have teamed up with is the ITSA, the International Token Standardization Association, that some of you might have heard before. and they have developed the so-called ITIN, the International Token Identification Number. And that number is important because it is machine readable, and once that ITIN has been assigned to your project, to your token, it can immediately be deployed to north of 14,000 asset managers and banks, because the ITIN is, for example, fully integrated into data providers like WM Data Service, who service the German-speaking countries. There are others, and the key leverage is that token providers would not need to build individual interfaces to those banks, but they are incorporated into the framework. We check all of the requirements, and then we have the agreement with the ITSA that as part of our rating and transparency scoring, we can then generate those ITINs for the carbon projects. So that is, I think, then making sense for everyone, because it will increase transparency and reduce risks and basically allow also, when you mentioned that, more easily to keep the connection between assets and projects and so forth. Yeah, and just real quick, carbon is just the beginning. There are many projects that have a very similar underlying concept, just like yours is slightly different also, but the grand idea is somewhat similar. There are water credits, biodiversity credits, an interesting type of new tokens, and maybe that's something that also Max can talk about, is green stable coins that are backed by carbon, for example, not just fiat currency, supply chain management solutions. Considering the time, I won't get into that, but I'd be happy to have another presentation.
Yes, and also having a curated list. I was looking also, like, getting into these projects, and having a curated list here brought by you is already super cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And yeah, we can do a deep dive into those different categories the next time. Yeah, so feel free to join our journey, either on LinkedIn or individually by connecting with us. I'll post my LinkedIn link in the chat in just a second. Yeah, and with that being said, I would like to hand over to Max, who's then going to introduce himself and who's going to tell us what his company does by looking at the depth of the token. Max.
Thank you, Wolfram. So I think, looking at the time, I will probably save you a very, very long introduction because obviously, like, the tokenomics topic is a very complex one and it has lots of dimensions. So that I will try to get I will share my contact details, and then you can check out what I'm doing, basically. So in the end, my organization at the moment is the Token Research Cooperative, and we offer education on and analysis for tokens. So basically, if you look in the beginning, you can check us out. Here's like tokenresearch.org if you want. Like, we have a free open course, and we are also becoming a data provider in some other areas, and we write reports, kind of like a DAO organization. And
very cool, Max. Welcome. I'm also a fellow token engineer. So super
nice
cool to see people, organizations coming up, and hearing also you're organized as a co-op. Definitely will invite you one more time, Max.
Nice. Yeah, so basically the TE Academy or TEC were kind of like our inspiration, because there's a big community for builders, and we want to be the community for like sane fundamental investors, like people that don't like shill and Van Lambo and like all this crap that our industry always produces. And so we thought, like, okay, how can we do that? And then as a cooperative, obviously we share the revenue with our contributors, and we have free education, which is essential. And one thing we are always trying to push is like the principles of tokenomics. And for me, really, and I think for everyone in the ReFi space, we should always think about tokenomics as a coordination mechanism. So we are not necessarily, not necessarily just trying to fundraise or trying to have like the next marketing buzz, but we are trying to coordinate people in a decentralized network to do something. And in our case, often it's getting money from one point to another point where value is created and our planet is saved. And it's not as easy as it sounds, obviously. It doesn't sound easy probably, but like for me, as I always say this, like Bitcoin is an economic innovation. It's like it's defined in its code, but the alignment of incentives make it work. It's like the really the core thing, like you have miners that are, incentivized and aligned to provide security, while you have users that transact, and then part of the transaction goes to the miners and so on. It's the same in Ethereum and others. Like the mechanisms are different, but in essence, we are trying to reward people to behave in a certain way and do something for us. And really, the thing is, like, for me, and there's like a very scientific definition for me, tokenomics is really the art and science of designing coordination mechanisms through incentive design. That's a bit abstract. So in simple words, it's like how rewards are designed and paid out to achieve a certain goal. So that goal could be something like offering a smart contract platform, funneling payments, the Bitcoin network, and so on. So really, it's about, okay, if we mint a token, like how can we get people to create value and capture some of the value? And really, it's like you can coordinate people to do anything. Like it can be, co-invest, co-provide, co-create, co-own, co-govern something in a decentralized network. And really, it can be anything from knowledge, data, IP, security, infrastructure. Doesn't really matter. There's like, the demo.zone tries to incentivize you to share like your car data with third-party developers so that you can break out these silos in the automotive industry. And like Helium rewards you for setting up an antenna in your home, and Hive Mapper to drive around with a camera. So it's really like coordination issues where you benefit from connecting people and resources. And obviously, the Helium example is amazing coordination example of just millions of antennas being set up somewhere, and being like the ability for, like, imagine a company would go there and say like, okay, we buy millions of Helium's antenna and whatever, and we need contracts and technicians. It would be like an insane coordination effort, and it would cost probably hundreds of billions. And the Helium network found a very efficient way to coordinate this with private people. And this really is the thing we're looking for. And especially in ReFi, we're looking for ways like, how can we organize companies to do the right thing, individuals to do the right thing? And in these coordination things.
Just
really,
a question, do you have any, any unique way that Helium did it as an example or so, or is it really just plain vanilla incentives for creating that network? Or did they do something a little bit different or so? I met them at the positive blockchain gathering, and it was quite impressive, as you say. And then again, seeing this map here, like if you could get this scale for solar, the distributed finance, DeFi for distributed energy, then we would have solved a lot of the issues currently.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I think Helium made it, like it obviously incentivizes setting up these antenna, but also then they have like their own consensus mechanism, which is called proof of coverage. So you obviously, like, you can't set up an antenna and then think like, yeah, I'm going to get nice rewards. But there's also their own basically consensus where you have to prove that you're providing this IoT coverage and only then, you get money. And obviously it's very smart because one antenna and one validator, and there's like these small devices and small entities and participants, and they all validate each other, which is like super cool and makes the system very efficient. And obviously solar, yes, would be so cool if we could do the same with like a massive decentralized solar infrastructure. That would be mad. Exactly. And let me check the time before I'm like, yeah, okay, it's decent. So if there's like, I'm still like evaluating like how many fundamental principles there are for tokenomics, but I defined 7 + 1, maybe 8, depends on the project. And it's really like, and it works so well for ReFi, is about tokenomics should solve a coordination problem. Like, I'm personally not interested in the marketing coins, in the fundraising coins. One thing, and that's really hard, is also tokens need a clear utility and constant demand drivers, which is something a lot of ReFi tokens will struggle, and I will show you an example. There's also tokens should have value accrual, obviously, so some way the network, some way where the network creates value should accrue to the token or be captured by the token. A bit like if you want to have a not so great and not precise analogy, something like an equity, for example. And there's another one, allocations and rewards should be aligned with value creation. It's also not, should be obvious, but like the funding and the money should go there where value is created instead of just extracted. So we've seen it with countless games, GameFi, Axie Infinity, and so on. Also DeFi, that much of the rewards just went to yield farming, and then farm dumpers just grabbed it and sold it immediately. So this is also really a big issue. The next one is really about distribution mechanisms. So airdrops don't really work, like we've seen that time and time again. So we need to have the right distribution mechanisms to these creating values, and then the 6 and 7 are fairly obvious ones. They're like something like projects need sustainable reward structures. Obviously, you can't just burn money or create a token out of thin air and then inflate that token and burn it. That also will create like a lot of, a lot of sell pressure and price, falling prices. And one thing that you always need, and is like, the problem in our tokenomics industry was like we over obsessed over supply for a long time, over emissions graphs and tokens issuance rates, and who cares, but like supply should really support the usage of your network and the future development. So that's what you want to focus on. And like if you have 10 billion or 30 billion tokens in the beginning, that stuff doesn't really matter. Yeah. And I mean, like I would, normally, I did this yesterday. Normally we would go through this insanely long presentation, but since we can't do that, I will show you like a light paper I like, and an idea I like, and its difficulties. So it's really like, so I looked at, you might know the Single Earth, like they're trying to introduce this merit token, which in its essence, it's a pretty good idea. And it really like, it's a green currency, it's backed by the land and the landowners, and they use different, different mechanisms to evaluate the land. And, a landowner can go there and say like, hey, I have this land, I want to be incentivized, obviously, to keep this land healthy. And if we think about the first principle of tokenomics, we would see, okay, yes, it's a coordination problem, or like it tries to solve a coordination problem. So it has a currency, it tries to take money from companies that want to not necessarily offset, but hit their sustainability goals, and brings it to landowners around the world that want to keep their land healthy, and that fits like the greater purpose. So to pause a minute, the first principle would be like a checkbox. The second one, now token utility or demand, is in this case much harder, because they are basically trying to develop a currency that is used and that you can use in transaction, and then you have a positive impact. And while this is a great idea, in theory, like there's this famous economist called Minsky, and he says like, like everybody can create money. The difficulty is getting it accepted. And like this, like if you look through the website and everything makes so much sense, and there's this marketplace that's really well through, but in the beginning they launched basically the only thing you can do is buy and hold this token without anything else. And I would say as a tokenomist now, okay, demand is weak. So we have only very weak demand drivers at the moment. And I think they also mention it here somewhere, like there is a roadmap or something. And this roadmap, yeah, it's like, I think it's this one. Yeah. So yeah, it's like now you can buy and hold the token somewhere. And like obviously the future vision is that it becomes widely used and accepted nature-based currency, but the gap between where we are now and this is going to be huge. So I would probably not buy the token.
At the same time, again, I think you're right. Like one needs to find out then if we want to go there, what is the next step that we could take next, and does that already have a utility value? I think that would be the path, right? It's still this exploration phase between now and this future vision that is behind all Web3 projects that have this creating the token and sharing it, but the people who see the same vision and want to get walk the path with you as part of the community. That's the whole idea of token, or starting with a token, right? If I have a straight roadmap that is super clear, then basically it becomes more business as usual.
I mean, you could say that the problem is like getting a currency accepted is always the single hardest thing to do. And, like, I think maybe ETH as the ultrasound money narrative, or like Bitcoin with some people could achieve this, but it's like, if you're just, so like Chainlink or like ETH in Ethereum as an ecosystem is used to pay for gas. So it has like a direct utility in this massive network. This has like no utility in its own network. So it has to be adopted as a currency in it. And even things like ApeCoin is very unlikely that it will be accepted as a currency because it's such a hard problem. I mean, the Americans got the dollar accepted worldwide, basically because they were the biggest economy and won the war, right? So it's like this insanely hard problem. And this is something I see in like the region network is the same. Like I see this time and time again in ReFi that people have like amazing idea. If it works, it's going to be groundbreaking, but this is kind of the problem, like the gap between like, okay, there's like a single sensible demand driver and getting it is that this is like this huge gap. And obviously,
well, on that topic, we definitely have to get you on Token Engineering Commons Twitter space or so. And then we can go deeper into those realms, but it's super interesting. Also, like the carbon coin and the scenarios and so on. For anyone who hasn't yet read it, the Ministry of the Future is a really cool sci-fi book on carbon-backed coins that saves the world. But also a lot of insights on political economy and what would actually take to get a carbon coin off the ground. Isn't that that enticing? Cool.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the time, right? Like, I mean, we can discuss it also. Like, happy to take any questions. Questions for Nadine and Wolfram.
I have a lot. Go ahead, Nadine.
I don't have a question. I loved it. I really love how Max is explaining it. So for me, it's super simple, like in a simple way that you can really follow. And I think it doesn't matter if it's a ReFi token or any other token, right? We always have kind of like the same problems, and it's often a structural problem. And yeah, I'm not sure if also maybe either from the others in the call, does anybody has a question to Particula or to Max? Feel free to ask us now. They're all shy.
I do have a question for Particula and maybe one for Max also. First of all, I just wanted to say thanks to all the presenters. I'm so glad that this conversation and presentation is being recorded. They were brilliant presentations, so clearly articulated and really clearly setting out the problems for both. And actually, I think it's a question for all presenters, given that this information is out there and the research is there, and we have so many case studies of where people have failed and made pitfalls. What do you think it will take for processes to improve? Obviously, information sharing and having a database for Particula where people can kind of see best case examples is one way, but do you feel like there's just a general current of people deciding to build what they want to build and not necessarily taking into account the fact that there is a need to maybe start reshaping thinking? I guess my question, if I were to summarize it, is that there seems to be a pervasive, poorly sort of thought out approach to building projects, which is tragic because people pour so much energy into it. So where do you think this shift into doing better and having better frameworks is going to come from? And how do you see all of your work fitting into that?
Well, maybe I can take a starting point and then I'd be happy to hand over to you, Max. I think one aspect is that the biggest likelihood for projects and companies that work in this space to succeed is making their offering a Web2 experience powered by Web3. I mean, it starts with the complexity that will scare people away and the processes. I mean, especially if we're talking about a B2B environment. I mean, corporations simply don't have processes in place to deal with MetaMask wallets or first go to an exchange, buy some other stable coin. By the way, all of these transactions in the crypto world, as you know, triggers taxable events. I personally, it's my personal opinion, don't think that's going to work. So I think a real big aspect besides the tokenomics, and I'll let Max answer that part, is really like providing custodial wallet solutions for the masses. You will always find individuals and some tech-savvy company which are also willing to be the first mover. But the mass adoption, I think, will require simplicity, security, and pretty much a Web2 experience powered by Web3. I mean, a lot of people might not like it because they are like in love with the technology, and it is great. But unfortunately, I believe we need to hide it behind the scene. Max, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, what I would actually agree is like the thing is like when I look at, obviously I look at business models, and then obviously the tokenomics are like kind of like the Web3 business models. Usually it's like the ReFi community is still very in a scientific and experimental approach, and there's like super smart PhD people that wrote like 60 pages white paper with like difficult formulas and whatever, and it's like it's sometimes very disconnected from the real world, and then you get like this very abstract concept of like a green token that could it's like it needs to be explained a lot, and then it's like you don't really know what you're getting, and then all the stuff why Particula exists is like, how do I get this on my balance sheet? I think probably, and yeah, I don't know, I as a tokenomist say now probably the processes and like standardizing it and making this easier is probably more important than coming up with the next construct to try to get like a new coin out. So yeah.
So getting things on the balance sheet or getting these digital assets on the balance sheet of corporates is the go-to goal of Particula.
Well, let's say adding to mass adoption, I would say, is our goal. You know, I think, by the way, the projects that have a much easier path to succeed are those where, for example, blockchain technology is only applied to immediately offset the unavoidable emissions. You know, it's like you never make it a tradable asset. It is really just like the proof of the offset. You know. I think that is you know, our goal, assisting companies getting the insight they need to make data-driven decisions and helping the token issuers to, you know, to understand what they have to provide to be investable for the corporate world.
So that I see, like if it is for the corporations to offset directly, that can be a transparent solution. They wouldn't even see or need to know that they're interacting with a blockchain account, but just that would be their proof of offsetting. It's a one-time action. But then when you say invest, that's where I'm like, that's where I'm, you know, I think it will be difficult to say we are Web3 native, which means non-custodial, right? Then adding the custodial option to it makes it another beast. Could you imagine that, you know, I'm not putting anything, but could you imagine that Particula or another service provider for those corporates could actually do the custodial, leaving those crypto native, you know, players actually remain crypto native, but still be able to offer it? Like, could you imagine that is a possibility, or do you know already players like that?
Sure. I mean, we see the whole bandwidth of projects, really. I mean, any combination you can imagine. And I'm personally also in favor of the Web3 aspect and the non-custodial wallet solutions. But I think the reality, if we're talking about the corporate world today, is that they are more traditional and that they are not buying these things. Just as I showed in my presentation, the offerings are there, but something keeps them from pulling the trigger, and regulation.
Don't they also have asset managers actually? Like, maybe it's not the corporates solving for this custodial issue, but actually their service providers that they use currently anyways, and who are more digital and more fearless of actually going non-custodial and being the in-between bookkeeper.
Sure, and probably there will be both ways, and I think, you know, corporations will be educated more and more, but you know, if you add dimensions we haven't spoken about, like staking tokens and pooling them, you know, quite frankly, I don't know, you know, if you take a large corporation, take Siemens, for example, can you imagine Siemens anytime soon getting heavily into staking and all of these things?
That's why I had to leave Siemens in 2017.
I know.
Although we were very good and well-funded with blockchain, like the firewalls keep you away from going full in. No, I'm with you. I think, like, definitely very, very cool insights.
And by the way, last word, Siemens has been proven to be quite you know, quite advanced by the bond they were issuing not too long ago on the blockchain. So they are a good example, but I guess I hope you know what I meant.
But not yet staking. And the issuing of that bond took another, like, how long are we in? Like 5 years or 4 years? It just takes time. And I think, like, again, plays like Particula definitely help shorten that time, because you're definitely putting a lot of information clarity and making sure that information symmetries emerge. That's the starting point. And we're a bit over time, but definitely, like we did the transparency, and the next thing you see, we like the image was ours. The smart contracts are audited. The very simple logic of an exchange can be on chain now, or the question is like, how do we now create the tokenomics or the token dynamics that can emerge around it by creating these meta rules of distribution and so on. But before we even go there, is exactly where we're at. Are we offering this now really Web3 fully, Web3 native, and nothing for the others? Because as you said, like they say they have demand for transparency, but they're not coming. And are we going to wait for them? So that's our current state. Getting the transparency and the exchange with you helped a lot. Today, you shared a few insights that are going to definitely be super interesting for the community stakeholders on the solar asset manager sides as well. So I hope, again, that we definitely have another deep dive into Unity Crypto's transparency score, and then discuss also. I'm sure we invite Max again. I really like the 8 points and definitely can underscore them. Super cool insights. What I see is that we're getting there, you know. I mean, in 2017, 2018, Esther, to your question, it was worse. It was a lot of hassle, energy blockchain just coming together. But really, we really didn't know what we're doing. And the whole idea of, okay, internet exchange of values happening, but how, that was it. But then also showing the improvements of actually, yes, automating a lot of financial functions on chain is possible through DeFi. Again, that helped a lot. Like in 2019, I was pitching my heart out and even the smart contract developers weren't quite convinced of these automated market makers and so on. So it was it's gotten much better. And again, being able to talk with you on this level today, for me, it's like heaven. I definitely see we're making progress. It's not just each project trying by themselves. Again, like just working with Particula or having these frameworks out there where you just actually need to check the boxes and provide the links. It makes it so much easier to not to do waste effort, yeah, or waste cycles, as you say. Cool. Thank you so much. And I'll share the recording today. Now I stop it. Thanks for coming, and hope to see you at least one more time in this community call. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for
Thanks for having us.